Did you know that your social media habits might be conditioning you for something far more dangerous than simple addiction? A teenage girl's unexpected encounter with Jesus revealed how our current technology use is paving the way for a future spiritual enslavement. Her story will make you rethink every moment you spend on your devices. As the sun dipped below the horizon on a typical Friday night, Sophia found herself in a familiar position. Sprawled across her bed, one hand propping up her head, the other clutching her smartphone, she began her nightly ritual of endless scrolling. The soft glow of the screen illuminated her face in the dimming room, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. With each swipe of her thumb, Sophia delved deeper into the digital realm. Her eyes darted from one post to the next, consuming a rapid-fire succession of images, videos, and status updates. The allure of social media platforms held her in a hypnotic trance, promising an endless stream of entertainment and connection. As the minutes ticked by, Sophia's world narrowed to the confines of her screen. She laughed at memes, double-tapped photos, and left comments without a second thought. The real world faded into the background, replaced by the vibrant, ever-changing landscape of her social media feeds. Hours passed unnoticed, the night growing deeper outside her window. Sophia remained oblivious, her attention wholly captured by the infinite scroll. Each new post brought a tiny hit of dopamine, keeping her engaged and craving more. The addictive nature of these platforms was on full display, designed to keep users like Sophia scrolling for as long as possible. In this digital trance, Sophia lost all sense of time. The clock on her nightstand ticked away, unheeded. Her parents' footsteps in the hallway went unnoticed. Even the rumbling of her own stomach, a sign of a missed dinner, failed to break through the spell cast by her device. As midnight approached, a subtle shift began to occur. The edges of Sophia's vision blurred slightly, and a faint ringing started in her ears. At first, she dismissed these sensations, attributing them to eye strain or the late hour. But as the minutes ticked by, an unsettling feeling began to creep over her. Sophia blinked hard, trying to clear her vision. The ringing in her ears intensified, drowning out the soft music playing from her laptop. A wave of dizziness washed over her, causing the room to tilt and spin. Her grip on the phone loosened, and for the first time in hours, she looked up from the screen. The world around her seemed to pulse and waver, as if she were viewing it through rippling water. Sophia's heart began to race, panic rising in her chest. She tried to call out, but her voice caught in her throat. The dizziness intensified, and she felt herself falling backward onto her bed. As her head hit the pillow, Sophia's vision began to darken. The ceiling above her faded to black, and the ringing in her ears reached a crescendo. In those final moments of consciousness, a fleeting thought crossed her mind. Had she just spent her last waking hours lost in a digital world? Then, suddenly, everything went black. Sophia's consciousness slipped away, leaving her body still and silent on the bed, her phone lying forgotten beside her. Little did she know, this moment of darkness was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about reality, technology, and the spiritual realm. The darkness enveloping Sophia wasn't the end. It was a doorway. Have you ever wondered what lies beyond the veil of our physical world? Sophia was about to discover a realm that would challenge the very foundations of her understanding, starting with a view of herself she never thought possible. As consciousness slowly returned, Sophia found herself in a state of bewildering suspension. She was floating, weightless, above her own motionless body. The room below seemed both familiar and strangely distant, as if viewed through a gossamer curtain. Her physical form lay still on the bed, the forgotten smartphone resting beside her limp hand. Panic gripped Sophia as the reality of her situation began to sink in. Was she dead? Had her hours of mindless scrolling somehow led to this impossible scenario? Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the surreal experience. She attempted to call out, to move, to return to her body, but found herself paralyzed in this ethereal state. The laws of physics seemed to have no hold in this new realm. Sophia's consciousness drifted effortlessly, allowing her to observe her room from angles she had never before imagined. The ceiling fan, usually so far above, now seemed within reach. Family photos on the dresser, typically viewed from below, now revealed hidden details from this new vantage point. As Sophia struggled to comprehend her situation, she began to notice subtle changes in her perception. Colors appeared more vibrant, almost pulsating with an inner light. Sounds, though muffled, took on a new depth and richness. It was as if her senses, freed from the limitations of her physical body, were expanding to encompass a broader spectrum of reality. This experience, as extraordinary as it seemed to Sophia, bore striking similarities to countless accounts of near-death experiences. Many individuals who have undergone such events report a sensation of leaving their physical bodies, observing their surroundings from an elevated position. The initial fear and confusion Sophia felt are also common themes in these narratives, as people grapple with a reality that defies their understanding of life and death. As Sophia's panic began to subside, replaced by a growing sense of wonder, she became aware of a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The air around her seemed to thicken, charged with an energy she couldn't explain. A faint glow began to emanate from the corners of her room, growing steadily brighter with each passing moment. The light intensified, filling the space with a radiance unlike anything Sophia had ever encountered. It wasn't harsh or blinding, but rather warm and inviting. As the brilliance enveloped her, Sophia felt a profound sense of peace wash over her, calming her fears and soothing her confusion. In that moment of tranquility, suspended between worlds, Sophia sensed that something, or someone, was about to make their presence known. The air hummed with anticipation, and she found herself holding her breath, waiting for what would come next. Little did she know, this otherworldly light was merely the prelude to an encounter that would forever alter her understanding of reality, spirituality, and the very nature of existence itself. As the light coalesced, taking on a form that defied Sophia's expectations, she found herself face to face with a presence more powerful and real than anything she had ever imagined. This wasn't the gentle, passive Jesus of Sunday school lessons or Renaissance paintings. The figure before her radiated an intensity that both awed and terrified her. Jesus stood before Sophia, his appearance a stark contrast to the familiar depictions she had grown up with. His eyes burned with a fierce love and wisdom that seemed to pierce through her very soul. The air around him shimmered with an otherworldly energy, and Sophia felt an overwhelming sense of love and authority emanating from his presence. Frozen in awe, Sophia found herself unable to move or speak. The weight of the moment pressed upon her, a mix of reverence and fear coursing through her being. She had never felt so small, yet so significant as she did in that instant. With a gentle motion, Jesus extended his hand towards Sophia. The invitation was clear, but the implications were beyond her comprehension. What would happen if she took his hand? Where would this divine encounter lead her? As Sophia hesitated, her mind raced with thoughts of the countless near-death experiences she had read about. People often spoke of feeling an overwhelming sense of peace and love in the presence of a higher power. Now, experiencing it firsthand, Sophia understood the profound impact such an encounter could have on one's faith and understanding of existence. Jesus' voice broke through her thoughts, calm yet carrying a weight that left no room for argument. "Sophia," he said, her name sounding both familiar and new on his lips, "there is much I need to show you." The anticipation of what was to come built within Sophia. What revelations awaited her? What truths about reality, spirituality, and her own life was she about to uncover? The air hummed with the potential of unspoken knowledge, and Sophia felt herself teetering on the edge of a great unknown. Taking a deep breath, Sophia made her decision. With trembling fingers, she reached out and grasped Jesus' outstretched hand. The moment their hands touched, a surge of energy coursed through her, filling her with a warmth and certainty she had never known. In an instant, the room around them disappeared. The familiar surroundings of Sophia's bedroom faded away, replaced by a vast, empty space. But this void was far from lifeless. As Sophia's eyes adjusted to her new surroundings, she gasped in astonishment. The emptiness before her was filled with countless glowing screens, hovering in midair like a galaxy of digital stars. Each screen pulsed with its own rhythm, displaying a dizzying array of images, videos, and scrolling text. The sight was both beautiful and unsettling, a visual representation of the digital world that had consumed so much of Sophia's life. As she took in this extraordinary sight, Sophia sensed that she was about to embark on a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about technology, spirituality, and the unseen forces shaping her generation. With Jesus by her side, she prepared herself for the revelations to come, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The void stretched endlessly before Sophia, a digital cosmos teeming with countless glowing screens. Each device hovered in mid-air, pulsing with an eerie, otherworldly energy. As her eyes adjusted to the surreal landscape, Sophia noticed faces peering out from the screens. Countless individuals, young and old, their gazes fixed and unblinking. These weren't just images or videos, they were real people, somehow present within the digital realm. Their expressions ranged from vacant to enthralled, each face illuminated by the harsh glow of their respective screens. Sophia felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the sheer scale of what she was witnessing. Jesus' voice broke the silence, his words heavy with concern. "This, Sophia, is the battlefield where the enemy wages war against your generation." He gestured to the vast expanse of screens, each one a potential weapon in this unseen conflict. As the gravity of his words sank in, Sophia began to understand the true nature of the spiritual warfare unfolding before her. This wasn't a distant, abstract concept. It was a very real and present danger, playing out in the palm of every hand holding a smartphone or tablet. The digital age had ushered in an era of unprecedented connectivity, but it had also opened new avenues for spiritual attack. Social media platforms, designed to bring people together, were now being used to isolate and divide. Apps meant to entertain were becoming tools of distraction, pulling people away from deeper spiritual truths. Jesus continued, his voice filled with urgency. The enemy has made technology his primary weapon against millennials, Gen Z and Gen Alpha. He knows their potential and seeks to destroy it. Sophia watched in horror as dark, shadowy tendrils seemed to writhe behind the screens, reaching out towards the mesmerized faces. As they moved through this digital battlefield, Jesus revealed the insidious nature of the enemy's tactics. These screens are not just devices, Sophia. They're alive with something dark and sinister. He pointed to a group of teenagers, their eyes glazed over as they scrolled endlessly through their feeds. The enemy uses these to enslave hearts, minds, and souls, transforming what could be a tool into a trap. Sophia's mind reeled as she processed this revelation. The very technology she had taken for granted, that had become such an integral part of her daily life, was being used as a weapon in a spiritual war. She thought of her own hours spent scrolling, the countless notifications that demanded her attention, the way her phone had become an extension of herself. As if sensing her thoughts, Jesus placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "This is why I've brought you here, Sophia. Your generation must understand the true nature of what they face." His eyes, filled with compassion and determination, met hers. But this is only the beginning. There's more you need to see. With a wave of his hand, the screens before them began to change. The images flickered and distorted, taking on a menacing red hue. Sophia squinted, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. As the picture cleared, her breath caught in her throat. Something new was appearing on the screens, something that filled her with a sense of dread she couldn't quite explain. As the screens before them morphed, Sophia's eyes widened in horror. Snaking out from each device were dark, metallic chains, their links glinting with an otherworldly malice. But these weren't ordinary chains. Each bore inscriptions that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Words like comparison, anxiety, lust, distraction, and pride were etched into the metal, each representing a different facet of the digital world's grip on its users. Sophia watched in disbelief as these chains wrapped themselves around the wrists, necks, and even hearts of the people staring into their screens. What shocked her most was that none of them seemed aware of their bondage. They continued scrolling, tapping, and swiping, oblivious to the spiritual shackles tightening around them with each interaction. "Do you see now, Sophia?" Jesus asked, his voice heavy with concern. Each chain represents a burden that social media imposes on its users. The enemy has crafted these digital traps with cunning precision. As they moved through the digital landscape, Jesus explained the nature of each chain. "Comparison," he said, pointing to a young girl whose chain seemed particularly tight, "leads many to feel worthless and inadequate. They measure their lives against carefully curated highlights, forgetting that what they see is rarely the full truth." Sophia felt a pang of recognition. How many hours had she spent feeling exactly that way, scrolling through her feeds and finding her own life wanting? Jesus continued, "Anxiety grows as people become addicted to constant validation and fear missing out. Lust takes root as images and videos cater to our basest desires. Distraction pulls people away from real connections and meaningful pursuits. And pride. Pride convinces users they are the center of their own digital universes." As Sophia absorbed this information, she began to see the insidious nature of these digital bonds. What had started as tools for connection and information had become weapons of spiritual warfare, slowly eroding the well-being of entire generations. "But why can't they see it?" Sophia asked, her voice trembling with the weight of this revelation. Jesus looked at her, his eyes filled with both sadness and determination. "That, Sophia, is the enemy's greatest trick. He has made the chains invisible to those who wear them. The very technology that promises freedom and connection has become a means of enslavement." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine as she contemplated the implications of this truth. How many people just like her were unknowingly bound by these digital chains? As if sensing her growing unease, Jesus placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "But this is not the end of the story, Sophia. There is more you need to understand about the ultimate purpose behind this digital deception." With a wave of his hand, the scene before them began to shift once again. The red hue intensified, and a new symbol started to appear on the screens. Sophia leaned in, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. As the image came into focus, she felt a sense of dread wash over her. Little did she know, she was about to confront a truth that would shake her understanding of technology and faith to its very core. The symbol on the screens pulsed with an eerie, hypnotic rhythm. Sophia's eyes widened as she noticed it wasn't just on the devices anymore. It was appearing on people's bodies. What could this mean? And why did Jesus look so concerned? As Sophia watched in horror, the symbol began to materialize on the foreheads and hands of the people entranced by their screens. It shimmered with a dark energy, seeming to burrow into their skin. Jesus turned to her, his expression grave. This, Sophia, is the conditioning for the mark of the beast. The word sent a chill down Sophia's spine. She had heard of the mark of the beast in church, but it had always seemed like a distant, abstract concept. Now, seeing it manifesting before her eyes, the reality of it was terrifying. Jesus continued, his voice heavy with urgency. The enemy is using technology to prepare hearts and minds to accept his mark. Each moment spent in digital bondage is a step closer to this ultimate deception. Sophia struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what she was witnessing. The biblical prophecy of the mark of the beast was unfolding in a way she never could have imagined. It wasn't just about physical marks or implants, it was a spiritual conditioning that had already begun. But how? Sophia asked, her voice trembling. How can screens and social media lead to this? Jesus gestured to the sea of devices before them. Society has become so dependent on technology that many can no longer imagine life without it. They willingly surrender their privacy, their time, and even their identity to these devices. When the time comes, accepting the mark will seem like the next logical step. The realization hit Sophia like a wave. She thought of her own reliance on her smartphone, how panic-stricken she felt when separated from it. How many times had she chosen scrolling over real-world interactions or spiritual pursuits? The conditioning is subtle, Jesus explained. It begins with small compromises. A few minutes of mindless scrolling here, a bit of oversharing there. Gradually, the digital world becomes more real and important than the physical and spiritual realms. People become numb to true connection, to the voice of the Spirit, making them vulnerable to deception. Sophia watched as the people around her continued to interact with their devices, oblivious to the sinister symbol appearing on their bodies. She realized with a start that she could have easily been one of them, unknowingly being prepared for something far more dangerous than she ever imagined. But it's not too late, Jesus said, his voice filled with hope. This is why I'm showing you these things, Sophia. There's still time to wake people up, to help them break free from these digital chains before the final deception takes hold. As the weight of this revelation settled on Sophia, she felt a mix of fear and determination. How could she possibly make a difference in the face of such a massive, insidious threat? As if reading her thoughts, Jesus squeezed her hand gently. Remember, you're not alone in this fight. But first, you need to understand how this relates to your own life and the lives of those around you. With those words, the scene before them began to shift once more. Sophia braced herself, knowing that whatever came next would challenge her perception of her own digital habits and their spiritual implications. As the digital landscape faded, Sophia found herself suspended in a moment of stark self-reflection. The weight of Jesus' revelations pressed upon her, forcing her to confront her own relationship with technology. She thought back to the countless hours she'd spent scrolling through social media, her phone an ever-present companion in her daily life. Memories flooded back, vivid and uncomfortable. She recalled the heated arguments with her parents over her phone use, their voices tinged with frustration and concern. How many times had they pleaded with her to put down her device during family dinners? How often had they expressed worry over the amount of time she spent in her digital world? At the time, Sophia had dismissed their concerns as the typical overreactions of an older generation that just didn't get it. She had rolled her eyes, insisting that her phone was an essential part of her social life, her connection to the world. But now, seeing the spiritual battle raging in the digital realm, she began to understand the wisdom behind her parents' apprehension. The generational divide regarding technology use suddenly took on a new, more ominous significance. Sophia realized that her parents' generation, while not immune to the allure of screens, had grown up in a world where face-to-face interactions were the norm. They understood the value of genuine human connection in a way that her generation, born into the digital age, often struggled to grasp. Jesus' voice broke through her thoughts, gentle yet firm. The conflict between generations over technology is not just about rules or rebellion, Sophia. It's a spiritual battle for the hearts and minds of young people. Sophia nodded, thinking of the countless families torn apart by disagreements over screen time. She remembered reading about a study that found 70% of parents felt frustrated by their children's device use, leading to frequent arguments. The statistic took on new meaning in light of what she had witnessed. But it's not just about the amount of time spent on devices, Jesus continued. It's about what that time represents, moments lost to real connection, to spiritual growth, to developing the skills needed to navigate the physical world. As Sophia pondered this, she recalled another study she had come across. It had found that families who implemented structured screen time rules reported a 30% decrease in conflicts related to technology use. At the time, she had scoffed at the idea of such rules. Now, she wondered if these boundaries were more than just parental control. Perhaps they were a form of spiritual protection. A wave of understanding washed over Sophia. Her parents' concerns, which had once seemed overprotective and out of touch, now appeared as attempts to shield her from an unseen danger. They had sensed, perhaps instinctively, the spiritual implications of excessive technology use. As this realization settled in, Sophia felt a mix of gratitude and regret. How many meaningful moments had she missed while lost in her digital trance? How often had she chosen the shallow connections of social media over deeper, more fulfilling relationships? Jesus squeezed her hand gently, his eyes filled with compassion. This understanding is just the beginning, Sophia. There's more you need to see about the larger conflict at play. With those words, the space around them began to shift once more. Sophia braced herself, sensing that she was about to witness something that would further challenge her perception of the digital world and its impact on human relationships. As the new scene materialized, she found herself facing a vast, tumultuous battlefield where the true nature of the generational conflict over technology would be revealed in all its complexity and spiritual significance. The battlefield before Sophia was unlike any she had ever imagined. Two armies faced each other, not divided by nations or ideologies, but by something far more unexpected: age. On one side stood the older generations, their faces etched with concern and frustration. On the other, the younger generations, their eyes flickering with defiance and misunderstanding. The air crackled with tension, a palpable divide that seemed to stretch endlessly between them. Jesus gestured towards the scene, his voice heavy with sorrow. This is the war that the enemy has orchestrated between generations, a conflict that tears families apart and weakens the very fabric of society. As Sophia watched, she could see the accusations flying back and forth. The older generations pointed fingers, labeling the youth as lazy, selfish, and addicted to their devices. In return, the younger generations lashed out, blaming their elders for not understanding, for creating the very problems they now faced. In the shadows between the two armies, a sinister figure lurked. Its form was indistinct, but its laughter echoed across the battlefield, a chilling sound that sent shivers down Sophia's spine. The enemy, Jesus explained, revels in this division. He has turned generations against each other, preventing the unity that could overcome his schemes. Sophia's mind raced as she tried to comprehend the scale of this conflict. She thought of her own arguments with her parents, the frustration she had felt at their inability to understand her digital world. Now, seeing the bigger picture, she began to grasp the root of these misunderstandings. The rapid pace of technological change has created a chasm between generations, Jesus continued. Those who grew up without smartphones and social media struggle to understand the digital landscape that shapes the lives of younger people. Meanwhile, the youth, born into this connected world, often fail to see the value in the wisdom and experiences of their elders. As Jesus spoke, Sophia could see the truth of his words reflected in the battling armies before her. The older generations clutched books and face-to-face conversation, while the younger wielded smartphones and tablets like shields. Each side clung to their familiar tools, unable to bridge the gap between them. "But there is hope," Jesus said, his voice filled with determination. "This conflict can be overcome, but it requires both sides to wake up to the reality of the situation." He turned to Sophia, his eyes blazing with intensity. The older generations must recognize that their children and grandchildren are under attack from forces they may not fully understand. They must pray, teach my word, and set an example by prioritizing spiritual connection over digital distractions. Sophia felt a surge of anticipation. What would Jesus reveal as the solution to this seemingly insurmountable divide? How could generations so different find common ground in the face of such a crafty enemy? As if in answer to her unspoken questions, Jesus continued, "Unity is the key. When generations come together, sharing their strengths and supporting each other's weaknesses, they become a formidable force against the enemy's schemes." The battlefield began to shift, the two armies drawing closer together. Sophia watched in awe as understanding started to dawn on both sides. The older generations reached out, offering guidance and wisdom, while the younger shared their technological knowledge, bridging the digital divide. "This is just the beginning," Jesus said, his voice filled with hope. "There is more to be done, especially by those who have been entrusted with leadership and experience." With those words, the scene began to change once more, and Sophia found herself facing a new revelation about the role of older generations in this spiritual battle. As the scene shifted, Sophia's eyes widened in disbelief. The older generations, whom she had always seen as pillars of wisdom, were now hunched over glowing screens, their faces bathed in an eerie blue light. What shocking truth was Jesus about to reveal about the very people meant to guide the youth? Jesus turned to Sophia, his voice tinged with sadness. "Look closely," he said. "The enemy's reach extends further than you might think." Sophia peered into the mist, expecting to see the usual suspects of youth culture. Instead, she gasped as familiar faces came into focus. Grandparents sat silently at dinner tables, eyes fixed on their phones while grandchildren fidgeted nearby, desperate for attention. "The call to arms," Jesus whispered, "begins with those who should know better." He gestured towards the older generations, his eyes filled with urgency. They too have fallen prey to the digital traps, often unknowingly setting a harmful example for those who look up to them. Sophia watched as elderly couples scrolled through social media feeds, barely acknowledging each other's presence. Middle-aged adults mindlessly played games on tablets, oblivious to the world around them. The sight was both shocking and heartbreaking. Jesus continued, his voice firm yet compassionate. The older generations must awaken to the reality of this spiritual battle. They are called to be guardians, yet many have lowered their defenses, allowing the enemy to infiltrate their homes and hearts through seemingly innocent devices. As Sophia absorbed this revelation, she began to understand the gravity of the situation. The concept of spiritual leadership in the digital age took on new meaning. It wasn't just about setting rules or limiting screen time. It was about modeling a life of genuine connection and spiritual depth in a world increasingly dominated by shallow digital interactions. Jesus pointed to a group of older adults engrossed in their smartphones. "See how they too are ensnared? The enemy's tactics know no age limits. Sophia recalled reading about studies showing rising rates of technology addiction across all age groups, not just among the young. The digital world had become an equal opportunity tempter. "But there is hope," Jesus said, his voice filled with determination. "The older generations have a unique role to play in this battle. Their wisdom, life experience, and spiritual maturity are powerful weapons against the enemy's schemes." Sophia felt a surge of anticipation. What specific actions would Jesus call the elders to take? How could they use their influence to turn the tide in this spiritual war? Jesus' eyes blazed with intensity as he outlined the responsibilities of the older generations. They must first recognize their own digital distractions and seek God's guidance in overcoming them. Then they are called to pray fervently for the younger generations, to teach my word with renewed passion, and to model a life that prioritizes spiritual connection over digital engagement. As Jesus spoke, Sophia saw a transformation begin to take place. Some of the older adults looked up from their screens, a new awareness dawning in their eyes. They began to reach out to those around them, initiating real conversations and offering words of encouragement and wisdom. "This is just the beginning," Jesus said, his voice filled with hope. "As the elders awaken to their calling, they will play a crucial role in reclaiming the hearts and minds of all generations from the enemy's digital snares." With those words, the scene began to shift once more. Sophia sensed that she was about to witness another revelation, one that would shed light on an even broader aspect of this spiritual battle. As the new image came into focus, she found herself facing an unexpected sight: a modern church service. The modern church service before Sophia seemed alive with activity, but something felt terribly amiss. Pews were filled, yet an eerie emptiness permeated the air. Could technology be creating a new form of absence in the midst of abundance? As Sophia's gaze swept across the sanctuary, she noticed a sight that made her heart sink. Throughout the congregation, the soft glow of screens illuminated faces, casting an artificial light that seemed to drown out the warm radiance of God's presence. Worshippers, young and old alike, were more engaged with their devices than with the service unfolding before them. During what should have been a powerful moment of praise, Sophia observed people scrolling through social media feeds, their fingers tapping rhythmically to a beat that wasn't the worship music. As the pastor began his passionate sermon, many in the congregation appeared lost in their own digital worlds, taking selfies or responding to messages. The disconnect between the message being preached and the congregation's engagement was palpable. Jesus' voice, filled with sorrow, broke through Sophia's observations. "This is my house," he lamented, "but it has become a marketplace for distractions. My people no longer seek me with their whole hearts. They seek entertainment, validation, and convenience." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, a stark commentary on the state of modern worship. Sophia pondered the impact of technology on religious practices. How could true spiritual connection occur when attention was so fragmented? Studies have shown that the average human attention span has decreased significantly in the digital age, now shorter than that of a goldfish. In a space meant for deep spiritual reflection and connection, this diminished focus posed a serious threat to genuine worship and understanding. As the service continued, Sophia noticed how quickly people's attention wavered. Eyes darted between the pastor and phone screens, dividing attention between the spiritual and the digital. The constant notifications and temptation to check devices created a barrier to fully engaging with the message and the presence of God. Jesus continued, his voice tinged with urgency. "The enemy uses these distractions to keep my children from truly connecting with me. They come to my house, but their hearts are elsewhere." Sophia felt a deep sense of sadness as she realized the extent of this spiritual disconnection. The very tools that could be used to spread God's message were instead becoming obstacles to experiencing His presence. As the service drew to a close, Sophia observed a troubling scene. Instead of lingering to pray or connect with fellow believers, many rushed to check their phones, as if making up for lost time. The sanctuary, once a place of reverence and community, now seemed more like a pit stop in people's busy digital lives. Jesus turned to Sophia, his eyes filled with both sorrow and determination. "This is why I've brought you here," he said. "My house needs awakening. My people need to remember the power of seeking me with their whole hearts." As these words settled in Sophia's spirit, she began to sense that her role in this divine revelation was far from over. A new purpose was taking shape, one that would challenge her to speak boldly about the truths she had witnessed. Throughout history, young voices have often been the catalysts for profound spiritual change. But in an age of digital distraction and widespread skepticism, could a modern teen truly carry a divine message? Sophia was about to discover the unexpected power of youthful conviction. As the weight of all she had witnessed settled upon her, Sophia felt overwhelmed. The spiritual battle raging in the digital realm, the generational divide, and the distracted state of God's house, it all seemed too much for one person to combat. With desperation in her voice, she turned to Jesus. "What can I possibly do?" she asked, her words barely above a whisper. Jesus' eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of compassion and unwavering determination. "Sophia," he began, his voice resonating with authority, "I have chosen you as my messenger. Your generation needs to hear this truth from one of their own. The concept of a divine calling in modern times might seem out of place to some, but history is replete with examples of young people who have sparked spiritual revivals and social change." Sophia's mind raced as she considered the magnitude of this responsibility. How could she, a typical teenager, convey such a crucial message to her peers? Jesus, sensing her doubt, continued, "Do not underestimate the power of your voice, Sophia. Throughout history, I have used the young to speak truth to their generation." He reminded her of youth-led spiritual movements that had transformed societies, from the Jesus People movement of the 1960s to more recent faith-based initiatives addressing social issues. As Sophia absorbed his words, she began to understand the unique position she was in. Born into the digital age, she could bridge the gap between timeless spiritual truths and the modern challenges faced by her generation. Yet the path ahead would not be easy. Jesus didn't shy away from the difficulties she would face. "You will encounter resistance," he warned. "Many will dismiss your message, labeling it as outdated or irrelevant. Others will mock you for speaking out against the very technology they depend on." The challenges seemed daunting, but as Jesus spoke, Sophia felt a growing sense of purpose stirring within her. Jesus placed his hand on Sophia's shoulder, his touch infusing her with strength and courage. "Remember, Sophia, you are not alone in this mission. My spirit will guide you, and there are others, both young and old, who will stand with you once they hear the truth." With each word, Sophia felt her resolve strengthening. The enormity of the task ahead was balanced by the assurance of divine support. She realized that her journey through this digital battlefield had prepared her for this very moment. As their time together drew to a close, Jesus' final words to Sophia were both a commission and a promise. "Speak boldly, Sophia. Your voice has the power to awaken hearts and minds. Trust in me, and you will see lives transformed." With these words echoing in her spirit, Sophia felt herself being drawn back to her physical body. The digital void began to fade, replaced by the familiar surroundings of her bedroom. As consciousness returned, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The truth she had witnessed demanded action, and Sophia was ready to answer the call. Imagine waking up one morning and feeling like everything you once knew was a lie. For Sophia, her phone, once an extension of herself, now felt like a sinister presence. What could transform a typical teen's view of technology so dramatically? And how would this revelation change not just her life, but potentially the lives of countless others? As consciousness slowly returned to Sophia, the familiar surroundings of her bedroom came into focus. The soft glow of her phone screen, usually a comforting sight, now filled her with an overwhelming sense of dread. Her hand, which had instinctively reached for the device, recoiled as if touching something cold and unnatural. The weight of her divine encounter pressed heavily upon her, making the once cherished smartphone seem like a harbinger of spiritual danger. Sophia's eyes darted around her room, taking in the posters, clothes, and trinkets that had defined her life just hours ago. Now they seemed trivial, almost meaningless in comparison to the profound truths she had witnessed. Her gaze settled on her phone, lying innocently on her nightstand. With trembling hands, she picked it up, its familiar weight now feeling impossibly heavy. As she unlocked the screen, a flood of notifications greeted her. Messages, likes, comments, all clamoring for her attention. But instead of the usual dopamine rush, Sophia felt a deep sense of unease. Each notification seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, reminding her of the change she had seen in her vision. The words Jesus had spoken echoed in her mind. I didn't even believe in this stuff before that life-changing night, and now I found this channel so I can warn as many adults and young people as possible. The enormity of her experience began to settle in. Sophia had undergone a profound spiritual transformation, one that would alter the course of her life forever. Research has shown that individuals who undergo intense spiritual experiences often exhibit significant changes in behavior and worldview. For Sophia, this change was immediate and visceral. Without hesitation, she did something that would have been unthinkable just hours ago. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I prayed like I had never prayed before, Sophia would later recount. She fell to her knees, her phone forgotten as she poured out her heart to God. Tears streamed down her face as she prayed fervently for her friends, her family, and her entire generation, all of whom were unknowingly ensnared in a spiritual battle waged through their devices. As dawn broke, casting a soft light through her window, Sophia felt a renewed sense of purpose. The divine commission Jesus had given her burned in her heart. She knew that the path ahead would be challenging. How would she convince her peers of the dangers lurking behind their screens? How could she share her experience without sounding crazy? But as these questions swirled in her mind, Sophia felt an unexpected calm wash over her. She remembered Jesus' words, "You are my messenger. I have chosen you to warn them, not just your generation, but all generations." With this reminder, she stood up, ready to face the day and the mission that lay ahead. Sophia's awakening to this new reality marked the beginning of an extraordinary journey. As she prepared to share her message with a world deeply entrenched in digital culture, she couldn't help but wonder how many others were unknowingly trapped in this digital battlefield, and more importantly, how many were ready to hear the truth. Sophia's journey through the digital battlefield reveals a chilling truth. Our devices are more than just tools, they're weapons in a spiritual war. The enemy uses screens to enslave hearts and minds, conditioning us for a dark future. This isn't just about addiction or wasted time, it's about our very souls. As viewers, we must ask ourselves, how deep have we fallen into this digital trap? Are our devices pulling us away from real connections and spiritual growth? It's time to reevaluate our relationship with technology. We need to prioritize genuine spiritual connection over digital distractions. Consider this. When was the last time you truly sought God without the interference of a screen? How might your spiritual life change if you put down your phone and picked up your faith? The choice is yours, but the stakes have never been higher.